Hello, everybody. Jose Rodriguez back again. This is a weird one. People think, and I used to think the same thing, a printer such as a Canon printer, pigment type printer, that utilizes Chroma Optimizer, and for whatever the reason, you notice that, say, you're only printing on matte media. So why would I need Chroma Optimizer applied to my prints when I go in the driver? It's not even activated. But yet, I'm seeing my Chroma Optimizer levels drop on my cartridges, on my level ink level indicator on my driver or the printer itself. What is going on? Well, normally Chroma Optimizer is of course designed to provide you, because you're printing with pigment inks. Pigment inks are basically, if you shrink yourself down microscopically, it's gravel, and gravel floating in a liquid, okay? And so the surface of that application of ink is kind of rough. So it makes light refract, and it doesn't provide a gloss. So if you're printing on something like platinum glossy, you're going to see a difference between the borders and the actual printed image on that paper, because the pigment part of that image is going to look duller. It's going to look less glossy than the untampered border edges. So you need something shiny to spray over that to smooth out those little high points and low points of that gravel called pigment. And now you have a smooth surface, and it's going to look glossy. Does it match the original gloss of the paper itself? Probably not, but it gives you a pleasantly, clean, glossy, with no changes in gloss, or what we call gloss differential across the image. Now, there are two options. You choose either automatic or full. Automatic takes into account where has ink been laid on my paper. Wherever there is ink, there will be an application of Chroma Optimizer. A border has no ink, so no Chroma Optimizer will be applied to that border. And it will look different. It will have a different level of gloss. Areas that are extremely light, almost to the point where there's no ink applied, will receive very little Chroma Optimizer. And you will see this gloss differential. Sure, it'll save you on the amount of Chroma Optimizer use, because you're applying it to the whole surface in different degrees of saturation level, if you will. So if you choose full, it just disregards how much or how little ink was applied across that image. It just applies a coat. But it's not going to go to the very edges, because there's such a thing as a minimal non-printable margin. That's handled by the driver. Nothing you can do to change that. So you're always going to have slivers near the edges that are going to not get Chroma Optimizer. Not an issue if you're going to place that photograph in a frame, because the frame will cover. You'll actually crop off like a quarter of an inch of that image anyway, that print. So if you really, really must have a full application, there's a trick where you can actually say in Q image, apply a half-inch border, load your image, and then print it borderless. The half-inch will be expanded a little bit. The image will be a little bit larger. You may end up with, say, instead of half-inch, 3/8 of an inch or whatever border, and you'll have Chroma Optimizer edge to edge. And that would only be, say, something you would want to do if you were going to flush mount it and you want it perfectly smooth from every edge of that particular print to have gloss. And then you're going to mount it on the wall, say floating, a floating mount. So you want Chroma Optimizer all the way to the edges. But that's rare. Okay, most people will frame their photographs. All right, so when you print matte, is it using Chroma Optimizer? Yes, it is. If you have the Accounting Manager software installed, you can determine this. I'm not going to load mine right now, but if you watch my live stream, I actually showed you that matte paper used some Chroma Optimizer, a low amount. And glossy paper, of course, used a much larger or higher volume of Chroma Optimizer, because, of course, you would expect it to do so. So yes, it will use Chroma Optimizer, but you may ask yourself, well, why the heck are you using Chroma Optimizer if my paper is matte? How would you like to have your Chroma Optimizer channel clog? Of course not. So whether you're printing on matte or whether you're printing on glossy, luster, satin, semi-gloss, whatever, anything that has a sheen to it will receive Chroma Optimizer, but then so will matte. If you're a 90% matte type paper printer, you will end up with a clogged matte Chroma Optimizer channel because you would never use it. If in fact that printer just say, hey, you're printing on matte paper, I'm not going to use CO, I'm going to save you lots of money. No, it will clog. It will clog because it needs to be used, even if it's just a little tiny bit. Okay? Same thing happens with this puppy. Change the subject from printer to printer. That has two blacks. One is matte black, so let's just call it Chroma Optimizer. Would only be for, say, glossy paper. And when you use matte paper, somehow it still uses it. The same thing happens here. When you print on glossy paper, it activates the what? The photo dye ink. It uses a lot of that ink, but it uses a teensy little bit of matte black ink as well, because it doesn't want it to be clogged from lack of use. So when you're printing on matte paper, it will use a lot of matte black ink and a teensy-wincy little bit of glossy dye black ink because it doesn't want that channel to clog. Wonderful. You have a printer that never clogs. When you run nozzle checks, you're also running all 5 or 6 channels at the same time. When you run a nozzle check on the Pro 1000, you're running all 12 channels at the same time. So that also operates to make sure that all the channels are spitting out a little bit of ink, okay? Not just selectively, like you think happens when you're printing glossy against, say, for instance, matte. So that is something they design on these printers. Otherwise, you would be so angry and complaining that, oh, why does my Chroma Optimizer channel clog so much? Why does my matte black channel clog so much? Oh, wait a minute, I only print on glossy paper. No wonder. No. The printer will always use a little bit of the other ink that you think is not being utilized. Also, cleaning cycles. Pro 1000. You don't use it for a couple of days, and you print something, it's going to run a pre-print cleaning cycle. It's making sure that just because you didn't print for a couple of days, every nozzle across the board, all 12 channels, will be cleared off before you begin to print. Okay. I have yet to see an issue, say, related to clogged nozzles on my Pro 1000. And I've had it for several years now. Okay. That gives you an idea how reliable that printer is. And as angry and upset and, PO'd about all the things that it does before it begins to print, just because I didn't print for a week. Why is it doing? You waited too long. Period. A week is too long. Heck, 2 days is too long. So it will always run that cleaning cycle before you begin to print. And the size or the volume of ink that it uses will depend on how long you let it sit. I ran my nozzle check yesterday. It ran a cleaning cycle. It's a very short one, but it ran a cleaning cycle, and I think I went over like 24 hours by a few more hours. That's all it takes. But anything I send to it, I can be absolutely assured is going to be printed perfectly. That's the price you pay. All right, that is it for now. Thank you so much again for all your support. You guys have been hanging with me forever, and I really do appreciate that. So until the next time, of course, happy printing, happy refilling, happy everything related with printers. Bye-bye, everyone.